Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Coming up, what's on the primary ballot? Our election coverage includes two in-depth looks at high-profile races for Chula Vista Mayor and San Diego County Sheriff. Finding baby formula in San Diego, it's not so easy amid a nationwide shortage. We will show you one local group that's helping local parents. And Lowrider cruising is returning to National City, but the city says someone will have to pay for the extra police presence. Emotions are heated in the South Bay over protections for renters and the business of being a landlord. A move to add more eviction protections is on pause, and as Kitty Alvarado reports, the city is hearing it from all sides.
Renters in Chula Vista showed up in force to Tuesday's city council meeting to urge elected officials to pass stronger eviction protection ordinances. Dozens spoke during public comment about the need to extend the eviction moratorium and close renovation loopholes, saying landlords abuse current laws to evict lower-paying tenants. Renter Dora Parra broke down in tears when she shared her story.
Where are we going to go? I got 2 weeks. Both my other neighbors here. I've been at this residence 17 years. She's been here, living there almost 50 years. And we're both being evicted. And we're here asking for help.
But landlords like Michael Campbell spoke out too, saying creating unnecessary laws to punish a few bad actors is not the solution.
I think this is an overreach in trying to solve a problem that is not really significant. And I don't know, I don't want to be a landlord anymore.
In the end, it was all for naught. The city council voted to postpone voting on the ordinances until July 12th, but not before someone voiced their frustration out loud.
His kids, his family, we need safety.
We're trying to get to that, please, sir.
It was very disappointing.
Leah Simon Weisberg, the legal director of Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment San Diego, a group leading the movement to protect tenants in the city, says if the city won't act, voters will.
The voter supports strong tenant protections. It's just the lobbyists and the power of the realtors sometimes prevents electeds from doing the right thing. And I think that's mostly what we saw last night.
We've raised a lot of questions.
Council member Jill Galvez says that after hours of testimony, it was clear that not only did they not have enough city council members to take the vote, but the proposals lacked the substance and research to go forward.
It's very confusing. I think that we need to have a better mapped out plan and really address how many staff people will need, how many additional attorneys we'll need to hire in the city to enforce our own ordinance.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
And we'll stay in Chula Vista as we bring you some of our coverage on the June 7th primary, now just a couple of weeks away. The county's second largest city is electing a new mayor. KPBS reporter Gustavo Solis introduces us to those who are on the ballot.
Chula Vista's structural budget deficit is projected to grow to $12 million in less than a decade, and the next mayor will have to address the city's finances. Every candidate agrees that Chula Vista needs to do a better job of attracting businesses and growing its tax base. But how they plan to go about it is very different. City Council member Jill Galvez says that the city simply needs to watch how much it spends.
So going forward, you always have to be mindful that things can happen and you don't spend money that you don't have. Right now, what we're facing is high inflation. And so we're seeing the cost of energy go up significantly. We've seen the cost of gas, which impacts our over 700 vehicle fleet.
Sanera Encarnacion is a first-time candidate. She wants to take a more proactive approach when it comes to business development.
We could really be targeting and be much more proactive than we've ever been at identifying who are the likely work centers or employers to come down to Chula Vista. Let's go talk to them and find out what they need, right, to make that decision. And we need to be doing that 2 years out from when we know their lease is going to be up, right? Like, we need to be so much more proactive than we've ever been.
Amar Campanajar ran for Congress twice in the East County. He says the current mayor and city council have left a lot of money on the table, particularly from the federal government.
And I've heard, our current mayor has gone to meetings and asked for earmarks past the deadline. And it is just unnerving to hear that. That's millions of dollars on the table. And instead of getting those earmarks, we have to raise local taxes. And so, or just live with the deficit.
Rudy Ramirez was on the city council from 2006 to 2015. He also says the city needs to do more to attract businesses.
I would invest in getting this land more readily available for an employer. Right now, if an employer wants to come to Chula Vista, they're telling them, they're 4 years out before they can start operating. An employer doesn't want to hear that. They'll go somewhere else.
The other big campaign issue is a decades-long plan to bring a 4-year university to Chula Vista. The city set aside 400 acres of land and even offered leases for as little as $1, but nobody has taken their offer. Kepenajar says there's just no confidence in the city's current political leadership to get anything done.
I think that it's a lack of confidence in our city. I mean, we have a city where our leadership has not been able to deal with our deficits, has not been able to take out the trash. So investors look at our city, it's like, if you can't take out the trash, how are you going to build a university or a bayfront?
Encarnacion has university experience. She currently works at Southwestern College, where she helped San Diego State University bring a 4-year degree program there. Chula Vista took too long to bring this service to the South Bay, she says.
With all due respect to the city, we kind of saw we have to take the range of academic program planning because we're the experts, and our students here in South County can't wait for the city to find a university to come and do it.
Ramirez also thinks that Chula Vista's approach has been all wrong. He thinks that the city should bring research companies to the South Bay first.
And I think they've been approaching it in the wrong way. First, hoping that they could, that a UC system or a state system would come down and decide to settle in Chula Vista. I think early on we knew that wasn't likely to happen.
Ramirez added that research companies that work in biotech and aerospace are investing millions in North County. The city should try to bring some of that money south. Galvez says that the city needs to explore private funding options to help lure universities to Chula Vista. She'd like to start an endowment and build relationships with top donors.
Past councils have invested millions of dollars in studying, what people want, but it's, getting from there to getting to the place of what people will donate to build is another matter. When you go on any university campus, you see that the buildings are named from the philanthropist.
Election day is June 7th, and you can already drop off your ballots. The top 2 vote-getters will face off in November. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
There are 6 candidates in the race. Councilman John McCann was not available for a recorded interview. Retired Army Major Spencer Cash declined to answer questions about city finances. New leadership is also coming to the county's law enforcement agency. On June 7th, voters will narrow the field for sheriff, which features no shortage of experience. Here's KPBS reporter Claire Tregesser with a closer look at those who are running.
There are 7 people running for sheriff. KPBS reached out to all of them and heard back from 3. We caught up with those 3 on the campaign trail.
I'm John Hemmerling. I am the candidate for sheriff here in 2022. I am endorsed by the Republican Party. I am a 30-year plus public servant. Between my time in the Marine Corps, my time at the San Diego Police Department, and my time at the City Attorney's Office as the Chief Criminal Prosecutor.
I'm Kelly Martinez. I've been with the Sheriff's Department for 37 years. I've worked my way up through the ranks, and I'm currently the Undersheriff. I run the day-to-day operations of the department.
My name is Dave Myers, and I am running for San Diego County Sheriff. Born and raised here in San Diego. I spent 35 years in law enforcement. I've worked my way up through the Sheriff's Department to commander.
We asked the candidates what they thought was the biggest issue facing the Sheriff's Department. John Hemmerling says it's the high number of deaths in San Diego jails. A state audit says the department should require mental health screenings at intake and more interaction between nurses and inmates, among other changes.
First thing is to make sure all of the things that were recommended from the state audit were implemented. I think there's many other things that they talk about in there. Some of the best practices from the board, from the state board as well that can be looked at. There's some best practices from the national boards as well that we're going to take a look at.
Kelly Martinez says it's hiring more staff, which leads to better care in jails.
We lost a lot of people in the last couple of years, so we need to hire about 400 people, both nurses and deputies. And then once, the hiring is so key because all of the other things hinge on having enough staff.
Dave Myers says the biggest issue is restoring trust in the department.
Sheriff's leadership has created an environment in which mistrust is the status quo in the sheriff's office. That the current status quo is not going to stop jail deaths. That the status quo in sheriff's leadership now is not going to address racial bias in policing.
Hemmerling is an assistant city attorney in San Diego. He says his leadership experience makes him most qualified for the job.
I spent almost a decade as a police officer working. Most of that time was in City Heights, where I worked a beat there in City Heights. I left there as a field training officer. I then went to law school while I was working at the San Diego Police Department, working my beat to become a better person for the community, a better person for myself.
Martinez, currently the undersheriff for the department, says she has direct experience leading the department.
Nobody knows the sheriff's department or our county better than I do, and I've already been working towards all of these changes and initiatives that we need to make our community safe.
Meanwhile, Myers, who's a retired sheriff's commander, says he can help diversify the department.
Create an environment in which the department of 4,700 positions reflects the community we're policing. That the community, members who want to be in law enforcement, live in the communities we're policing.
The sheriff is a nonpartisan office, but party politics still play a role in the race. Hemmerling was an independent voter, but in 2020 changed to the Republican Party and has their backing. He says despite the county's majority of Democrat voters, he can be elected.
No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you want to be safe in your neighborhood. It's the number one job of government is to be safe, to provide safety and security and public safety.
Meanwhile, Martinez was a Republican but changed her party to Democrat in November 2020 and has the backing of many well-known Democrats, including San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria. She says her decision to change parties was personal.
It was made before I decided to run for sheriff, but the sheriff's not partisan. The job of public safety really doesn't fall on one party or another.
Myers also changed his party from Republican to Democrat in 2016 and has the endorsement of the local Democratic Party. He ran for sheriff in 2018 and lost, but says it'll be different this time.
I was a full-time commander at the time. What's different this time is I'm retired. I'm not a full-time commander. I'm not getting picked on. I'm not getting marginalized. I'm not getting discriminated against.
The top two vote-getters in the primary June 7th will advance to the November general election. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
And new for this year's primary is the KPBS Voter Hub. You can customize your ballot to the address and learn about the candidates, voting centers, and some drop-off sites. We also have a Spanish language version. Just go to kpbs.org and then click on the Voter Hub link at the top of the homepage. It remains to be seen how abortion will factor into the election. Since the Supreme Court draft decision on a case that would repeal Roe versus Wade was leaked, we've seen protests across the country. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman shows us one going through the streets of San Diego.
Thousands poured into downtown protesting the Supreme Court's leaked draft decision that would overturn Roe v. Wade. If that happened, the constitutional right to an abortion would be taken away.
It's disgusting and disgraceful and shameful that we even have to do this for a woman's right to choose. I think it's my body, it's up to me what I do with it, and I think that if we go back into the dark ages, it's just going to be a terrible thing.
People say there has to be more done to protect a woman's right to choose.
There's got to be much more than just holding signs. I mean, you have to vote, you have to get educated.
Among those in the crowd was local physician Mariana Salerno. She worries about those who already struggle with access.
That's going to be who's going to be most affected, right? Lower income, black, brown, Latino, that's who's going to be affected because, as she mentioned, the people that have money can go and travel for their abortion.
If Roe is overturned, more than 24 states are poised to ban abortions or severely restrict them. Abortions would still be legal in California.
But we can't really be complacent with that because that could change at some point.
Advocates are now turning their attention to the ballot box.
The real goal is to, elect more pro-abortion and pro-sexual and reproductive health legislators.
I don't care what you say, you can take my rights away.
During Saturday's rally, there were some pro-life demonstrators. The two sides had some tense exchanges, but advocates say they won't be silenced.
We're not going to shut up till we get our way.
The Bands Off Our Bodies rally was organized by local Planned Parenthood officials. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Another story about people taking to the streets is among our most read stories this week. Kitty Alvarado covered the demonstration against gun violence this week at Balboa Park. The demand for drugs in the U.S. was on display as federal agents showed off a sophisticated cross-border drug tunnel. And from San Diego City College to the next frontier, KPBS meets the scientist set to become the first Mexican-born woman to head to space. New parents and caregivers are having to work a little bit harder to find baby formula. Local stores are among those hit by the ongoing national shortage. John Carroll went to Sherman Heights, where the community is taking care of its own.
The San Diego Original Black Panther Party for Community Empowerment, their full title, has been hosting a food distribution event in front of the Clementine McDuff Elks Lodge for quite some time now, but recently they added something new.
We put out a call to get people to donate to this cause.
The call was answered. Wallace says they received about 130 bottles of formula, a godsend for Kathy Dixon.
It's very sad that the moms can't get milk for their babies. We got to help, we got to feed the babies. We got to feed the babies.
Dixon was here getting formula for her grandchild, the mother of her great-grandchild.
Some are breastfeeding, but they need that extra nutrients and stuff. I just hope that the moms can be able to get what they need and not have to drive so far.
Given the shortage of formula, you might have thought it would be the first item to go here. That was not the case.
It became obvious shortly after getting here that part of the reason for this story was now going to be about getting out the message about formula being available. All the food is gone now, but they had 8 bottles of formula left.
We've been giving it out for the last 2 weeks, and it kind of amazed me that the story wasn't getting out that San Diego Original Black Panther Party had baby formula.
The food and formula distribution happens here at 6 Hensley Street every Wednesday, beginning at 11 a.m. Henry Wallace says he hopes the word will now get out that baby formula is here, especially for parents of infants filled with anxiety about where their baby's next meal is coming from. John Carroll, KPBS News.
San Diego's new ambulance company is still trying to get up to speed with its staffing. Weeks ago, KPBS told you about the struggle to provide the kind of service the city expected. Now, patience is starting to wear thin. Once again, here's KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman.
How tolerant and patient will the city be while this contract falls short?
San Diego's ambulance provider Falck is getting hit with a $457,000 penalty for not meeting response times. Data from Falck shows that they've improved in April, but they promised more ambulances on the road. And 6 months after taking over the 911 contract, they haven't lived up to that.
We have about the same service level as we had about a year ago. That is not what we expected in this contract. We expected more, and that's what we're holding them accountable for.
Fire Rescue Chief Colin Stoll says the promise of extra ambulances is how Falck won the contract last year. He says they continue to struggle bringing in and retaining employees.
If they are in fact doing everything that is within their reason and possible to improve staffing for the last 8 months, then this might be the best that we can expect to see.
Falck's managing director, Jeff Boehm, says the company is committed to delivering what they initially promised.
We're not prepared to make excuses. We take full responsibility for our contract and are committed to reaching these commitments. But admittedly, meeting these goals has been harder than we anticipated due to COVID surges and related to the lack of paramedic availability.
The fire department says ambulances are getting to 911 calls, but the lack of staffing means first responders are pulling extra shifts to make it happen.
Falck needs to get serious in their recruitment, hiring, and retention incentives of current paramedics, or we will continue to not meet the 1,008 hours promised, and we will not be successful. Our people are committed, but are getting crushed.
Falck says they are offering incentives for new hires and existing employees who pull extra shifts. This is the company's second update at the City Council's Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee. City officials say they're not seeing enough improvement.
We are beyond being surprised by the situation.
Initially, the city was going to fine Falk $2.3 million, but they reduced the amount due to COVID surges back in December and January. The fire chief is preparing for the worst, and he's currently looking into a plan that would bring ambulance services back in-house.
And hopefully we won't have to use it, but we need to have that in place.
Falk has San Diego's 911 contract for the next 5 years. Their next contract update is scheduled for July. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
National City's lowrider car culture is making a comeback, but it won't be cheap. It has nothing to do with gas prices. Instead, the city says it needs to charge a hefty price to properly staff cruising events. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer explains.
A 30-year ban was lifted on lowrider cruising in National City earlier this month as part of a temporary 6-month trial period. After the event, city officials gave the United Lowrider Coalition organizers a post-event assessment and 8 recommendations, including 1 to have a police sergeant and 6 officers at each event at a cost of $7,813 each time.
We're not charging anybody to cruise down Highland Avenue. We're not making any money. We don't have that kind of money to pay per cruise.
United Lowrider Coalition member Jovita Arellano says she's unsure if the extra police are needed and where their organization will get that kind of money. The National City Police Department said that the last cruise event lasted longer than expected and drew a crowd much bigger than planned for in the group's application for a temporary use permit, or TUP. Police say they received several calls about problems during the event, but the Lowrider Coalition's political advisor, Aida Castañeda, says their group shouldn't be responsible for bad actors who take advantage of what she calls a family-friendly event.
And honor the fact that it is a public right-of-way. We talk about constitutionality, and if we even can have a law that doesn't allow people to congregate in a space. So we are asking really interesting questions that deal with our right to walk a public street.
National City Mayor Alejandro Sotelo Solis says cruising will continue in the South Bay City.
We wanted to clarify that the cruises will not be eliminated. And secondly, there aren't any resources or requirements that are being asked of the ULC, of the United Lowrider Coalition, that are not being asked of any other TUP permit holders.
The city will meet organizers next Monday to go over recommendations, which include provisions for crowd management, public safety, and the creation of a traffic plan. Lowrider cruise nights are planned for the first Friday of every month until October under a trial basis, with the next cruise event set for June 3rd. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
In North County this weekend, thousands will graduate from Cal State San Marcos. More than half of them are the first in their family to receive a bachelor's degree. Education reporter MG Perez has the story of one graduate who turned heartbreak into hope.
What I'm doing right now is just watching this pressure gauge and making sure it doesn't get too low.
22-year-old Madison Wagner does best with hands-on learning.
And we evacuated about 3 times with nitrogen.
She also speaks fluent chemistry, a challenging science a community college counselor once told her was too difficult for her to pursue.
There was a big part of me that did believe what that counselor told me and did think that I couldn't do it. But there was a big drive for me. I wanted to make great medicine, and I knew to do that, I needed to go into science.
Madison grew up in Valley Center as a child rodeo champion. She was crowned Miss Rodeo California in 2019, an accomplishment someone else told her she could also not achieve. That was the same year she transferred to Cal State San Marcos, where she will graduate this week with her bachelor's degree in chemistry, the first in her family to do so. But her family is missing someone.
He suffered really severely with schizophrenia and depression.
The Wagners loved and lost their son and Madison's older brother, Pearson, suddenly to mental illness when he was just 16. The stigma attached to his death is something this young scientist is determined to end while she continues her work in the laboratory.
It really inspired me to make a change and to contribute what I could to making good medicine and making changes in the world.
Big instruments, too.
Madison has been mentored by Dr. Robert Ife, a Cal State San Marcos associate professor who has trained students who went on to do work in laboratories run by Nobel Prize winners. It's a perfect match for the former rodeo queen, determined to prove she is saddled and ready to change the world of medicine.
I want students to reach their potential and achieve their goals, even if it's a small one that others have said, nah, don't worry about it. If it's something you want to do, definitely try.
Just solid carbon dioxide, and as you can see,
in August, Madison will begin her PhD in chemistry with the prestigious Scripps Research Institution. She is also the commencement speaker at graduation, where she will mention her brother Pearson and the science she will practice in his memory. She considers that a gift.
I just feel very proud for how far I've come and thankful to him and thankful to my parents, most of all. Yeah.
One college graduate this spring, as strong as the memories she holds on to. MG Perez, KPBS News.
And a reminder, you can watch these stories and all of our content on the KPBS YouTube page. We also live stream KPBS Evening Edition weeknights at 5 o'clock. We hope that you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. We want to leave you with music from the latest episode of Live at the Belly Up. Episodes air Friday nights at 11. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great weekend.